So, you've woken up as a medieval king. Congratulations. I think. Let's find out how long you survive. Before we get going, tap that like button and subscribe, especially if historical insomnia is your thing. And hey, let me know in the comments, where are you listening from and what time is it there? I read every single one. You could be curled under a blanket, stuck on a night train, or just hiding from Monday. Either way, you're here, and I'm glad. Go ahead, dim the lights, pull the blanket higher, and let the hum of the story fill the room. You wake up, not to birds or sunlight or any of that poetic nonsense. It's the 14th century. You're greeted by a spiteful chorus of iron bells clanging in the chapel tower just outside your window. Not out of piety, just pure medieval malice. Is it 6 a.m.? Could be. Time doesn't exist here, just noise. You're in what counts as a bed, thick oak posts draped in heavy, siege-ready curtains. The mattress is a cocktail of feathers, straw, and likely one rat with a lease agreement. The blanket smells faintly of damp wool and suppressed scandals. You blink. Alone. That's new. Normally, your royal bed is shared with your wife, your mistress, your other mistress, or at least one of your hounds that believes it owns the pillow. But not today. It's just you and a cold draft with more attitude than most diplomats. You swing your legs off the bed and immediately regret it. Your knees snap like dry branches, your ankles feel like they've been reassembled by someone with a grudge and a hammer. You're 38. Which back then basically means you've cheated death and should be celebrated like a living relic. You reach for the bell. A small bronze chime that summons anything from a warm bath to a declaration of war. 2 shakes. Somewhere down the corridor, a servant stumbles, another sighs. Feet shuffle toward your room like they're hoping for mercy. Anselm arrives. 12 years old, already carrying the physical trauma of royal service and too many chamber pots. He bows low, almost concussing himself. "Good morning, your majesty," he mumbles. You grunt. That's enough to grant him access. He approaches with your robe. It smells of lavender, damp stone, and the kind of money that doesn't apologize. His hands tremble as he drapes it over your shoulders. Not because you're scary, but because the idea of you is. The crown waits on your dressing table. Gold. Heavy. Slightly off-center from the last time you dropped it mid-feast after too much wine and self-toasting. It never quite forgave you. You look at it. The familiar weight returns not from the metal, but from the meaning. The crown doesn't care about your aching joints or ambitious in-laws. It doesn't flinch at 3 generations of ignored tax complaints. It just waits. Cold. Watching. And yes, still dusty. Anselm clears his throat. "Should I summon the royal healer for your foot, sire?" You glance down. Ah yes. Your royal foot is rebelling again, red, inflamed, unamused. Likely the venison. Or life in general. You wave him off. Later. You limp to the window. Robe dragging behind you. The crown still where it was untouched. You peer through the window at your domain, the mist hugging the hills, rooftops shimmering with frost, and the village slowly stretching itself awake under your uneasy reign. You take a sip from last night's abandoned goblet. The wine is tepid, flavored faintly with disappointment. And yet, despite the inflammation in your joints, the silence in your chambers, and the heavy crown you haven't even worn yet, you still feel like royalty. It's not even dawn proper, and somehow you've already relived your entire reign in miniature. Anselm is still lingering nearby, dutifully plucking imaginary lint from your robe, some of which might actually be moving. You let him. He needs a purpose, and frankly, you need someone to bear witness to your quiet existential dread. At last, you lower yourself into your dressing chair. The one with a lion etched into the backrest and a seat that complains ominously every time you shift. You're fairly sure it's symbolic. 2 more attendants arrive with bowls of steaming water and little glass jars of something expensive and herbal. They bow in near unison. One mutters, "For the face, your majesty." You arch a brow. "What's wrong with my face?" They freeze, eyes wide, caught mid-movement. "Nothing, sire. Just morning dew." You nod solemnly. Morning dew, it seems, is now palace slang for exhaustion and a beard that looks like it's planning a strike. You endure the entire cleansing ritual. A cloth that's wetter than warm. Oils that reek of rosemary and regret. A razor so blunt it feels more ceremonial than functional. They work around you like you're a relic from a ruined shrine, reverent, cautious, and painfully slow. You sit motionless, resisting every urge to sneeze, frown, or twitch. In this moment, you may be sovereign over a kingdom, but your fate rests with 3 men and 1 aggressively disinterested blade. The final touch, the crown, remains in your lap. You don't place it on your head. You just hold it. It feels heavier than usual. Or maybe you do. And then, inevitably, the door bursts open. Your Lord Chancellor strides in mid-sentence, scrolls under his arm, wig sitting like it weathered a thunderstorm. He never knocks. That would require self-awareness. His name is Everard, and he is both the most efficient man in your court and your primary cause of migraines. 6 guild petitions, 3 border incidents, and a goat theft that has somehow spiraled into sorcery accusations. Also, the bishop's waiting to discuss a chapel roof made entirely of lead. You haven't even had bread yet. You wave a dismissive hand. Start with the goat. He blinks. Truly? You nod. Absolutely. You're stalling. You need something absurd, something mildly entertaining, anything that doesn't scream national consequence. The goat sounds promising. You miss being curious. You're escorted into what's pompously titled the sunroom, though it gets about 2 hours of dim light through a glorified arrow slit. The table is set like a feast for one who no longer believes in joy. Pewter plates, tooth-endangering bread, and a pheasant that has clearly been roasted twice just to be safe. Your food taster, Benedict, is already chewing. He nods sagely between bites. No poison, he mutters through a full mouth. You don't react. You just sit at the far end of the too long table and take up your knife. Breakfast as royalty is an ordeal. A herald drones a list of supplicants waiting to grovel. A scribe records every mouthful for the archives. For what reason? Unknown. Maybe future generations will study your dietary habits and draw conclusions. You certainly haven't. There's someone declaring the weather like it's a dispatch from the front lines. Fog from the east. Rain threatening the barley. You wonder briefly if the sky is staging a coup. Wilfried, your steward, arrives next, bearing a tray of jams like sacred offerings. He bows low and recites the eternal question, gooseberry, blackberry, or, heaven help us, the onion-plum combination that someone once called the royal favorite. You don't respond immediately. You just look at him. He visibly shrinks. Gooseberry, as always. And yet he asks every morning like it's prophecy. By the time breakfast ends, your shoulders are knotted, your foot pulses in rhythm with your heartbeat, and your brain has already endured a half-dozen imagined confrontations without a single victory. Still, you rise, because the crown is waiting. And kings don't rest. They only grow better at pretending they ever did. You enter the great hall like you're stepping onto a battlefield. And in a way, you are. No swords, no banners. Just scrolls, grievances, and voices pitched with self-importance. The noble kind, the sort who think calluses are for commoners and suffering is spiritual unless it affects their estate. You lower yourself into the high throne at the front of the room and do your best not to groan out loud. The throne is a monument to discomfort. Not symbolically, physically. A tortured device of oak and splinters with cushions that are more suggestion than substance. The lions carved into the armrests seem personally offended by your spine. You adjust once. Instant regret. The hall fills with a hum of footsteps and murmurs. Robed figures queuing up like actors rehearsing authority. First comes a man from the fishing guild, bowing as though his spine might snap, unrolling a scroll and launching into a speech about boat taxes and something involving eels. You nod politely while your thoughts drift back to the breakfast pheasant you didn't finish. Then comes Willett, your falconer, still decorated with rogue feathers and a wild look in his eye. Sire, the hawks have developed a fondness for the chancellor's wigs. I believe it's a sign. You raise an eyebrow. Of what? He thinks for a beat. Judicial vanity collapsing. You sigh. Tell them to aim lower next time. After that, 2 barons appear, locked in a dispute over a hill. One claims it is his because he urinated on it at age 12. The other insists it's ancestral because his father died nearby. You suppress the urge to settle it with a coin toss and request maps. There are no maps, only emotions. You send them both to argue with your scribe in a cupboard until someone breaks down. Then, like a cold breeze with paperwork, Everard returns. We must revisit Prince Baldwin's petition for more land. You inhale. Baldwin, your cousin, your headache, famous for hunting in monasteries and calling every woman wench, even the ones holding weapons. Tell him he'll get land when he stops lighting other people's on fire. The bishop appears, trailing enough robes to clean the floor and collect the entire castle's dust. He bows dramatically and adjusts his beard. Sire, the chapel roof leaks onto the altar. We suggest melting down 3 silver candlesticks for repairs. Which ones? He hesitates. Those gifted by your late mother. Your smile could cut stone. Then I suggest you find a new roof and keep your hands off her candlesticks. You don't shout. You don't rise. But the room silences anyway. That's the kind of authority the crown lends when worn properly. By midday, you stand again, stiff and aching. A steward guides you into a smaller chamber, just a moment to breathe. He offers wine. You accept without a word. The chair here is merciful and the fire dances kindly beside you. You stare into it, letting the glow blur the sound of courtly nonsense still echoing in your head. This is your world, voices, parchment, decisions. And as draining as it is, you belong to it as much as it belongs to you. You linger in the solar longer than intended. The warmth works through your knees. The wine, imported, sharp enough to wound, tempers the edge of your frustration. You swirl it in the goblet like it might grant you some truth. It never does. Outside the door, someone sneezes and pretends they didn't. Inside, the fire crackles. And for a fleeting moment, you're just a man with wine and silence. You briefly consider skipping the afternoon council, drawing the curtains, wrapping yourself tighter in royal velvet and feigning a noble affliction, perhaps a humoral disturbance. Everard would prescribe leeches and a broth of roots, and no one would dare question it, at least not where you could hear. But kings don't get to vanish. Not unless they want to find Cousin Baldwin warming the throne in their absence. So you rise, vertebrae protesting like rusty hinges. Your knees make noises that would frighten livestock. You grunt. You're beginning to suspect the royal physician avoids you out of professional embarrassment. Quite possibly the only monarch in history whose limp was earned by ceremonial dance. You tighten your robe-like armor and step into the hallway. The castle is teeming now. Servants move with frantic precision like bees halfway through a panic attack. A messenger from the north appears, soaked in sweat, his cloak clinging to him like a bad decision. He smells of leather, rain, and unease. Bowing so deeply, he nearly sets his hat ablaze on a torch. Message from the border, Your Majesty. You take the scroll. Damp. Smudged. Legible in theory. Trouble again. It's always something. Bandits, maybe? Rebels? Or just hungry farmers sick of watching tax men trot past on horses stuffed with your grain. You know what Everard will advise: troops, strength, a public lesson in loyalty. But your mother once told you fear silences people, but it doesn't win them. You fold the scroll and pocket it. Not yet. The council chamber is chaos. Raised voices. Flung maps. Someone arguing over grain. Someone else seems furious about hay. Or hay. It's unclear. You close your eyes. Just for a heartbeat. Pretend you're on a boat. Or in a tavern. Or a muddy trench. Anywhere but here. You raise one hand. The room obeys. Quiet settles, reluctant but complete. We send riders north, you say. But with food, not blades. Feed them first. If they torch it, then we march. Everard's mouth tightens. The bishop knits his brows like he's composing a hymn of disapproval. But neither speaks. You've bought yourself something precious, a delay. Silence. Maybe even sleep. The meeting dissolves like sugar in wine. Council members file out slowly, all pretending they weren't one insult away from swordplay over cereal. Everard lingers. He always does. You give him the look. The sovereign signal of leave me be but act like it was your decision. He nods as if it was and vanishes, already muttering dark things about ink and treachery. You slip into the library, one of the few sanctuaries left untouched by ceremony. The air smells of parchment, soot, and forgotten packs. The fire is low. The shelves stand tall and weary. You don't come here to read. Not really. Half the texts are in Latin. The rest transcribed by monks with bad lighting and worse penmanship. But here, the silence is yours. You pull a scroll without reading the title, drift to the window seat overlooking the orchard, and let the pretense of purpose settle around you like a disguise. Outside, the orchard keeper is mid-duel with a goose. Broom against beak. The goose wins. Again. You're fairly certain it's possessed. You make a note to mention it to the bishop right after denying his silver roof. Your stomach reminds you that you've skipped every meal that wasn't marinated in duty. You consider calling for something plain. Bread, cheese, an egg that doesn't come flanked by a vegetable sculpture. But you know how it goes. 5 servants. Applause. A cartographer to record the feast. You stay hungry. It's simpler. Then comes the knock. Soft. Familiar. It's Tilda, one of your longest-serving attendants. She's been part of the castle longer than the ivy on the east wall. She doesn't bow, never has to. She just gives you that look, the one that silently says, "You've been hiding in here again, haven't you?" In her hand, a modest plate. Bread, cheese, and 1 fig gently bruised. She sets it down next to you without saying anything. You glance up. "Thanks," you offer. She grunts and vanishes down the hallway. You stay seated a little longer, chewing deliberately, your eyes on the orchard outside. The scroll remains open beside you like a forgotten line in a half-learned play. The crown is still on your head. You remove it quietly. You place it near the plate and allow yourself a breath. Afternoons as monarch are peculiar. There's nothing urgent required of you, and somehow that's worse than a packed schedule. You're a painting with a heartbeat, silk-robed, surrounded by obligation, intermittently bowed to. You drift into the lesser wings of the keep, not because of errands, but because people tend not to follow you there. Today, you find yourself in the portrait gallery. It's chilly, stretched long, framed by fading images of your ancestors, most appearing to have passed from this life due to terminal ennui or excessive gout. One, your great-grandfather Alaric, holds both a scepter and, curiously, a squirrel. You've asked about it. No one answers, or they pretend not to hear. You pause in front of your own unfinished likeness. It's been in progress for half a year. The painter refuses to complete the eyes. He once said they keep changing. You still can't tell whether he meant it as an insult or a compliment. Either way, it means your portrait currently boasts a detailed nose and a hauntingly vacant expression. You move along. The guards nod when you pass. One sneezes mid-bow and narrowly avoids the stone wall. You nod back like you didn't notice. Strange, this life. To be visible always, yet rarely truly seen. You exit into a small courtyard. The afternoon sun pours across the cobbles like liquid gold spilled by accident. You find a bench. It cacks. Of course it does. Everything in this castle cacks, your knees included. A child darts by. Someone's boy. He doesn't stop. Doesn't bow. Just laughs and chases a stick like it's a beast of legend. You watch him, thinking of a time when you did the same. Before the advisors. Before the politics. Before breakfast included the fate of villages and bread debates. You close your eyes briefly. Take in the moment. A bird rustles the ivy overhead. A wind stirs the branches. Far off, swords clatter in a training yard. And for one fragile breath of time, there's no crown, no duty. Just you. Sitting. Existing. It doesn't last. Footsteps. Rapid. A page out of breath. The page is breathless. Your Majesty, the steward says the Duchess of Varn has arrived early. She's waiting in the antechamber. With 2 swans. And a poet. You open one eye. Did you say swans? He nods solemnly. Yes, sire. One's wearing a ribbon. You sigh. Stand up. Brush the crumbs from your lap and drape your mantle of responsibility back across your shoulders like a burden you didn't ask for. Send Bets to handle the birds, you mutter. The stone corridors echo as you walk toward the antechamber, your robe dragging behind like a judgmental ghost. At the threshold, the steward bows so deep it looks like a structural hazard. She's in high spirits, Your Majesty, he murmurs. And bearing gifts. You squint. Is one of them silence? He pretends not to hear. Inside, the Duchess is already holding her own court inside yours. Draped in furs that could conceal a family of foxes, she's surrounded by jittery servants and a poet who looks like he lost a bet involving rhymes. The swans are real. Two of them tethered delicately with silk cords, unbothered by indoor politics. One is biting the other's wing. The other is planning revenge. Your Majesty, the Duchess bellows, voice syrupy with entitlement. You dazzle. The light favors your noble features today. You consider pointing out the light hasn't reached this room since last spring. Instead, you bow your head just enough. Your Grace, I trust your travels were enlightening. She cackles. One of the swans refused to take the ferry. Rode in the carriage like a duchess herself. The poet clears his throat, mutters something about aristocratic poultry. You glance at him, velvet hat, vacant eyes, and the soul of a man who's survived 3 poetry readings without applause. Any news from Varn? You ask, instantly regretting it. She waves the question away like smoke. Trade is stable, grain is fat, my nephew may take holy vows, and I've discovered a spice as red as war and twice as fashionable. Smells like scorched garlic. She says it like she invented it. She probably believes she did. Recite, she commands the poet. He exhales like a man about to be executed and unfurls a scroll. Ahem. Ode to a king, in the manner of a dove, post-turnip dream. You raise a hand. Let's skip ahead. She pats your arm like you're a naughty child instead of a monarch with armies. He's bashful, she laughs. Now, about the eastern road, I need it widened. My swans deserve a smoother ride. You blink. Is that metaphorical, or are we still talking about birds? Both, she beams. An hour drips by. She demands. She gossips. She misquotes scripture and flirts with the accuracy of a broken compass. You sip wine you don't remember ordering, nod in all the right places, and resist the impulse to fake a collapse just to escape. Eventually, she rises. You've been a most generous host, she declares, clearly gearing up for another lengthy monologue. But you're faster this time, standing, taking her hand with just the right bow. Always a privilege, Duchess. May your return be mercifully dull for both you and your entourage. She beams, somehow taking it as a high honor. As her party departs, the poet mouths a silent thank you in your direction. You briefly consider knighting him out of sympathy. The room falls still. Well, except for the gift one of the swans left behind on your favorite rug. You sigh at the sight, then glance around. Still better than another round in the council chamber. You don't return to the council right away. You need a pause. A deep one. Maybe a winter. Wandering slowly through the halls, you pass faded tapestries portraying your ancestors in victorious poses that likely owe more to creativity than history. One shows a man, possibly a great-uncle, gripping a wolf in a headlock while kissing a nun. You stare at it, unsure whether to feel admiration or mild panic. By now, the castle is steeped in late afternoon quiet. Voices hush. Footsteps soften. Even ambition feels drowsy. The bustle gives way to fatigue. Supper's on the horizon and everyone's just biding time. You slip through a side door and climb the old staircase to the north tower. No one goes there too steep, too drafty, too little glory. Which is why you like it. Up top, the wind croons through the stone slits and the air smells like forgotten things. There's a chair by the window. You sink into it not like a monarch, but like a man with tired joints. You let your posture collapse. Let your belly forget its duty to look regal. From here, the kingdom doesn't look like yours. It looks imagined. The rooftops down below are sketch lines. The fields stretch like a rumpled quilt. In the distance, the river threads its silver way toward nothing. It's humbling, in a good way. Then comes a knock, soft, deliberate. You almost pretend not to hear it. But you know the knock. It's Tilda. She never waits for permission. She enters, places a wooden cup on the ledge. Cider. From the steward's stash. Thought you might like it. You arch an eyebrow. You steal from me now? She shrugs. I reclaim. He didn't know it was yours to begin with. You sip. It's warm and sharp, sweet and spiced. Your eyelids lower longer than intended. She watches you, arms crossed. You've not eaten. Again. Your legs puffed up. Again. And you smell like politics. You glance at her. That bad? You smell like bird accessories and false promises. You chuckle. It stings a little. Not from offense, just from truth. She exhales. Her tone softens. You don't have to be iron all day. You look out the window. If I'm not iron, I bend. Maybe, she replies. but lately you've been cracking. You don't answer. Just sip more cider and watch the last of the light melt across the hills you rule. Before leaving, she says there's soup by the hearth. I'll bring you a bowl. And if you try to feed it to the dog again, I'll shrink your robes myself. She disappears down the stairs before you manage to whisper, thank you. Not as a monarch, just as someone tired. You remain in the tower long after the last rays disappear. The cider seeps into you, radiating warmth outward until even your fingers feel less stiff. The quiet around you doesn't press, it comforts. Outside, daylight folds behind the hills like a blanket being drawn over the world. Below, torches flare to life one by one. The kingdom seems to exhale with you. You should return. Duties wait. But instead, you stay in that old chair, thumb tracing the rim of the cup. It's smooth and too smooth. Worn by time and use, like it's lived more lives than any royal seal. You wonder who else sat here. Likely no one with a crown. Kings usually favored the solar or the strategy table. You've always been drawn to the rooms people forget exist. You close your eyes not to think, but to remember. Not war. Not taxes. Not your power-hungry relatives. No, you drift back to the day you first entered the throne room. You weren't crowned yet, just a lanky boy of 13, maybe 14, drowning in a belt that refused to stay up. The hall had felt endless. The crown distant, absurd. Something that belonged on coins or in bedtime tales. You thought, I won't survive this. And in some sense, you didn't. That boy didn't make it. He was carved down, reshaped. A necessary casualty of becoming who you are now. You glance at your hands. The rings press harder these days. The faint marks of archery still ghost your skin, memories of days when your grip held a bow, not a trembling quill or a ceremonial rod. Faint music seeps through the walls. A lute. Wobbly, uneven, determined. Must be Aldred, the stable boy with bardish ambitions. The melody stumbles. Restarts. Trips again. You smile, not because it's lovely, but because it's real. There's no polish in it, no performance. Just effort. And somehow that's the most beautiful thing you've heard all day. You rise at last. Bones mutter in protest. You're not old, but your joints are convinced otherwise. You stretch, exhale, and place the cup on the windowsill. You won't see it again. Tilda always knows when something's been finished. Descending the stairs, your cloak rustles behind you, trailing like a memory you haven't fully let go. The castle feels alive now, not in the loud, busy way of daylight, but softer. Glowing. Candles flicker in alcoves, hearths crackle in the distance. You hear faint laughter from below, probably the kitchen staff. There's envy in you, not of their tasks, but their ease. Their togetherness. At the foot of the steps, a scribe nearly collides with you. He drops a scroll, fumbles it, stutters out an apology. You raise a hand. Don't worry, you murmur. You didn't see me. He grins genuinely and disappears with lighter steps. And for once, the weight of the crown feels less like pressure and more like a garment tailored to your shape. The castle at night breathes differently. The stones feel gentler. The light softer. You walk through it not as a ruler patrolling his keep, but as a man revisiting a place he still loves. No fanfare. No followers. The guards simply nod and stay where they are. You suspect Tilda had a word with them. She knows how to build silence. Passing the chapel, you notice it's nearly dark, just one candle flickering and the scent of burnt incense lingering like a memory. Someone inside is whispering prayers. You know they're not for you. And you're grateful for that. You step into the lower hearth hall, a quiet chamber tucked behind the kitchens. The air here smells of ember, onion, and old stories. This is the room where no one watches you eat. No ceremonies. No heroic food tasters. Just soup, a spoon, and enough quiet to slouch a little. Tilda's already seated by the fire. She nods toward the chair nearest the flames and hands you a bowl without asking. The soup is hot, thick, and full of recognizable ingredients. You eat in silence, the warmth settling into your bones. Still wearing the crown, she mutters after a while. You blink, touch your head, and chuckle. You'd forgotten it was there. You lift it off, place it on the bench. It looks oddly toy-like without your head beneath it. Tilda pours a dark drink into a second cup and hands it over. Careful, she says. It's got a kick. You take a sip. It kicks, but kindly. You tip the cup toward her. You could rule, you know. She snorts. I already do. You just wear the hat. You nod. You're not sure if she's joking. Willett soon appears, lured by the scent. Ah, royal remains, he says, sliding in beside the fire. Tilda, your soup restores my faith in questionable futures. Godric follows. He doesn't speak, just sits, pours a drink, and bumps cups with you. A silent toast between long-standing shoulders. You all sit there, king, falconer, guard, servant, no questions, no ranks. Just warmth, quiet chewing, and coals crackling down into stillness. And for a short while, with your crown beside you instead of atop you, you feel something rare, rest. Willett leaves first, muttering something about a dream involving ale and golden birds. He bows theatrically, trips, curses, exits. Tilda rises with a groan, scoops up your bowl, and eyes the remains. You barely ate. I'm trying, you say. Next time I'll feed you like a baby bird. Wouldn't be the first time. She smirks. Won't be the last. Then she's gone. Godric lingers. He doesn't speak, just stares into the coals like they hold answers. When he leaves, it's with a nod. Years of shared storms in a single gesture. Now it's just you and the fire. And the crown. Still there, glinting faintly in the low light. You pick it up, turn it in your hands. It's heavier than it looks. Always has been. Gold, cool to the touch. Set with stones you can't name anymore. Once it symbolized power. Now it feels more like burden. You think of today, the calls you made, the ones you avoided. The Duchess and her ridiculous swans. The boy in the courtyard. That letter still waiting. And her, the woman who wanted a garden, not a crown. You're playing chess with pieces you barely understand. You place the crown down again, gently. Not out of rejection. You'll need it again tomorrow. And tomorrow will come. You rise. The bench creaks. Your knees mutter. You rub your temple and exhale. You tell yourself you'll sleep. But kings rarely do. Not really. They catch fragments of rest and borrowed scraps of time. You exit through the hearth room's hidden door, the one even the guards forget exists. The corridor is dim, the torchlight flickers as if trying to confide in the walls. Your steps are softer here. Slower. No audience, no act. You reach your chambers. The door is cracked open. You pause. Listen. Only the hush of sleeping stone. You enter. The bed is turned down, prepared by invisible hands. You sit on the edge, unlace your boots, sigh through your nose. Your head feels both overstuffed and hollow. You lie back, letting the dark press around you. And before sleep has the chance to take you, you murmur toward the ceiling, half smiling. Let's see if I get it right tomorrow. Morning greets you as it always does, too early, too loud, and entirely too sure of itself. You wake before the bell. Unsettling. Cruel. A small window lets in a slice of gray light and a draft that seems to judge you. You blink slowly, staring up at the beams overhead, trying to recall who you're supposed to be today. And for one brief, glorious heartbeat, you forget. You're not the king. Not yet. Then your joints speak, your foot twinges, and nature drags you back to reality. You sit up with all the grace of a dropped sack of oats. The bed creaks like it holds a grudge. You swing your legs down and step directly onto something cold and unfriendly. A scroll. Naturally, you rub your face. Somewhere in the back of your mind, obligations are already queuing up, unresolved disputes, council nonsense, and that Eastern envoy who reeks of pickled ambition. You exhale. Roll your shoulders. The cracks sound like dry branches breaking. A knock. Measured, persistent. You already know it's Anselm. Come, you mutter. He enters with a tray, porridge, bread, a boiled egg, a piece of fruit that looks hopeful. Breakfast, sire, he says, gaze on the stone floor. He always looks like he's bracing for thunder. You nod. He places the tray down like it might scream. He lingers. The steward says the bishop is waiting. You chew the bread, muttering through the crumbs he can wait. Anselm hesitates. You catch it. Out with it. Did you sleep well, your majesty? You pause. It's such a simple question, it startles you. You nod. Well enough. He nods too, as if the answer means something. Maybe it does. He turns, stops again. There's a cat in the chapel roof. Might be nesting. You raise an eyebrow. Pregnant or holy? Hard to say. And then he's gone. You finish the bread. Skip the egg. You've never liked eggs before noon. You shuffle toward the robe near the fire, wrap it around your shoulders. The crown stays on the table for now. You glance at it. Let it glare back. Softly, you say, you and I. Again. Another morning. Another mantle. Another parade of pretending you're not exhausted. By the time you enter the throne hall, it's already in motion. Not joyful, just busy. Murmurs, papers, footsteps, the scent of too many courtiers pretending they arrived early on purpose. The herald calls your name with theatrical weight, drawing out syllables like a street performer with only one trick. You wonder, for the 100th time, if he rehearses in front of a mirror. Probably. You cross the hall slowly, not with grandeur, but because your knee is sending quiet warnings. The limp isn't a secret anymore. Hiding it only unsettles people. The throne awaits you like always, high on its dais, cold and unmoving, more monument than furniture. You lower yourself into it carefully, suppressing a grunt. The cushion remains as indifferent as ever, and the carved lions on the armrests continue judging silently. You shift your robe, settle your shoulders, lift the scepter. Everard is already deep in a scroll, his face glowing with administrative joy. First matter, sire. The grain merchants of Westmayer are requesting a reduced levy, citing too much rain this spring. They've sent samples. You arch a brow. They sent wet wheat? He nods, holding up a pouch. Slightly moldy. You wave him on. Commend their flair for drama. But no. Next, a knight arrives from the southern provinces. Sir Ilrich something. Wide shoulders, sun-gold hair, the kind of man ballads adore for being metaphor-friendly. He bows, flourishes, and presents you with a gleaming sword. For your glory, my king. You want to tell him you already have a drawer full of swords for glory, most unopened. Instead, you nod. Add it to the collection. He spins a tale about a wild boar the size of a hay cart. Gasps echo in the gallery. You sip water and hide a yawn behind your goblet. The bishop frowns, likely offended by unblessed bacon. That's a theological debate you're not ready for. Next, a woman from the far west. No title, no entourage, just a basket in her arms. She curtsies deeply, too deeply, and offers a pie. For your table, your majesty, she says. And your patience. You haven't raised taxes in our village in 3 winters. We noticed. You blink. You hadn't. Not on purpose, at least. Likely an oversight on someone else's spreadsheet. But you nod. The pie smells of cinnamon and quiet gratitude. After she leaves, Everard leans in. Shall I have it tested? You look at him. Touch the pie and I'll assign you to taste all your inkpots for the next month. The afternoon rolls on. Arguments over pasture borders. A man insists his neighbor's goats are possessed. Someone recites a poem about tax structure. It's the most painful thing you've endured all week, and you once sat through noble matchmaking proposals. By the end, your throat is parched, your spine tight, and your royal smile feels like it's been chiseled into place. You stand. The room bows. You exit, the pie warm beneath your arm like a secret. But you don't head to your rooms, not yet. The court spills behind you like a tide receding. Pages dart off with scrolls, guards resume their lazy posts, nobles vanish into alcoves to whisper loudly in private. Everard trails after you until you slow your steps ever so slightly. He gets the message and veers away, probably to file an urgent scroll on your eyebrow positioning. You walk alone, both hands cradling the pie, down the quiet hallway that leads to the map room. No one visits it anymore. Too far from court, too cold, too dusty, perfect. The door creaks open, startled by use. You step inside. The windows are narrow and high. Dust-laced light slants through the narrow windows, slicing the gloom like faded standards no longer flown. The maps on the walls are curling at the corners, cracked, faded, and decades behind. You told someone to replace them once. They agreed. Nothing happened. You didn't press the issue. Maybe you prefer them this way. They don't lie. They don't pretend. You settle into a scuffed leather chair at a small table in the corner. No throne, no ceremony, just a tired man with a pie and a kingdom sketched in mistakes. You unwrap it gently. The crust is imperfect, the filling a quiet storm of spiced fruit and something earthy. It smells like time was taken. You tear off a bite with your fingers. No dishes. No silver. No audience. Just food meant to make someone feel okay. And it works. Not decadent, not royal, but real. Comfort disguised as pastry. You chew slowly, staring at a map that still shows a lake that vanished decades ago. You consider fixing it, then don't. It's a monument now, in a way. A memory. Halfway through the second bite, your shoulders drop. Your breath evens. The silence finally wraps around you like a familiar coat. No voices. No waiting eyes. You remember the woman's words we noticed. You wonder if she'll ever realize what those 2 words gave you. A breeze slips through a cracked pane. You close your eyes and let it touch your face. And in that dusty room filled with errors and old parchment, you are not a sovereign. You're just someone chewing slowly, grateful for a moment without weight. Eventually, the pie is gone. Not inhaled, just gradually disappeared like you were trying to stretch the moment across the whole evening. You fold the cloth over the empty basket with unexpected care. You didn't treat the ceremonial sword that way this morning. But this deserved more. You lean back, hands resting on your stomach, eyes drifting up to the ceiling. A crack above you curves like a wolf. Or a boat. Depends on your mood. Today, it's a ship sailing west. Probably towards something warmer. The quiet clings like the smell of cinnamon still in the air. A soft knock at the door. Gentle. Predictable. You don't answer. You don't need to. The door creaks open and there's Tilda. Of course. One hand holding something practical. The other holding that look equal parts affection and fact. Knew you'd be here, she says. No judgment, just observation. You always show up here when the rest gets too loud. You grunt. You'd say more, but words feel heavier than silence right now. She glances around the room. Still haven't fixed that lake, she murmurs. It's a tribute now, you say. For when things were less complicated. She gives a faint smile and sets a cloak on the bench beside you. Chills setting in. Figured you forgot. You take it not out of need, but because it's easier to accept than to ask. She doesn't leave immediately. She circles once, fingertips brushing old tables and warped corners. Looking at the maps like she once helped sketch them. Maybe she did. You know, she says finally, you could just let them wait. You lift a brow. Who? Everyone, she answers. The council. That overpious bishop. And that cousin of yours who writes letters like failed poetry. Just tell them to wait. You sigh. Kings don't get to pause time. Her arms fold. You do. You just forget that you can. You don't argue. Because she's right. And it's easier to stay quiet than admit how badly you need the truth to be true. She starts toward the door, pauses at the frame. There's stew up in the upper hearth and fresh bread still warm. If you want it. You nod once. She nods back, then slips out. The door closes with a small click. You stay. The folded cloak rests across your knees. The empty basket sits at your side. The maps around you are still wrong, still fading, still honest. Somewhere down the corridor, the crown is waiting. It always is. But here, in this quiet corner of stone and flame, you're allowed to just be. No trumpet. No title. Just a man in a room that doesn't care who he is. By the time you rise, the light has shifted. The late sun has turned from gold to copper like a coin that's passed through too many lives. You push yourself up. The chair beneath you gives one last groan of protest, like it disapproves of being left behind. You stretch. Something in your spine clicks like a door reluctantly opening. You glance once more at the ceiling at that old ship-shaped crack before stepping back into the corridor. Outside, the castle has fallen into that special kind of hush that only stone knows how to hold. Not silence, just a settled quiet, the kind that carries the weight of everything unsaid. Your steps echo softly, cushioned by aging rugs and curtains that have forgotten their color. You move slowly through the corridor where the walls haven't been polished for guests, where the past lingers in corners and nobody bothers to sweep it away. A stained glass window spills the last of the sky's fire across the floor, rich reds, faded blues, saints and angels whose names have been worn away. One casts a ruby light across the stones, more omen than blessing. Or maybe just mischief from an old sun. You're too tired to decide. You make your way to the upper hearth chamber, tucked just behind the servants' wing. It's not grand. That's why you like it. The warmth hits you before you even cross the threshold. You stop at the archway and let it touch your face. That glow, that flicker, it doesn't ask anything of you. Inside, the room hums with the comfort only firelight can offer, the kind that paints old with gold and makes silence feel safe. There's stew on the hearth, thick, dark, generous. You smell herbs, roasted roots, maybe lentils, maybe love. You don't ask. You just fill a bowl. No silver, no plate, no eyes watching. Just your hands, your hunger, and a seat by the flames. 2 guards sit in the far corner, boots off, mugs in hand. They glance at you, not startled, not stiff. Just a nod. That shared understanding between those who carry things that can't be put down. You take your place. Sit low, robe tucked in, bowl warm in your lap. The first spoonful is too hot and you let it sting. It's good to feel something direct. For a while, no one speaks. There's only fire. The slow rhythm of spoons. The breath you didn't realize you were holding. No law. No sermon. No strategy. Just broth and warmth and the steady beat of not being alone in the dark. When the bowl is empty, you set it down. Your fingers are warm. Your shoulders have softened. You watch the fire crackle and lean back just enough to forget the weight you usually carry. And in that moment, brief, ordinary, honest, you remember that you were still here. Not as ruler. Not as symbol. Just a soul sitting beside a fire that doesn't care who you used to be. You remain by the hearth unmoving. There's something about this particular night, this particular fire, that holds more weight than heat. It pops and shifts as if it remembers the first time you sat here, a too young heir gripping a bowl with hands too anxious to eat. You'd spilled half of it down your front. The rest went cold. You had no hunger back then. Just expectation pressing hard against your ribs. Now you eat slowly. Deliberately. Like each bite might keep the cold out a little longer. The guards have gone. One drifted off without asking, the other carried him gently, offering a quiet look in your direction as if seeking royal approval to simply be tired. You nodded. Not as a king. Just as a man who understood. Now it's just you again. But it doesn't feel empty. It feels like room. The kind of space you forget exists when people fill every minute of your life with noise. You reach for the fire iron and nudge the logs. A brief flare of sparks flutters upward, startled and glowing. You watch them disappear, eyes unfocused, thoughts finally spilling out where no counsel can catch them. You think of your sister, the wild one. The one who vanished down the coast with a merchant and eyes too clever for courts. You never faulted her. If anything, you admired her escape. She used to write. Then she didn't. You picture her now in some nameless town, curled by a hearth like this one, laughing at nothing in particular. That idea brings you peace you don't deserve. Then the blade, your first real sword, not one meant for display, but for bruises and balance. You held it like it was purpose. Now you hold scrolls and promises and consequences. And her, the girl from the West Garden, the one who taught you how to climb the tower without being seen. You fell once. She laughed so hard she dropped the apple she was stealing. She married someone you barely remember. You married stability. It all feels like it balanced out. But not really. You shift forward. The embers have dulled now. No more dancing. Just breathing slow, red, ancient. That feels more honest. You glance at the empty bowl beside you. The heat still clings to your fingers. On your thumb, a smear of something. Ash maybe. Or ink. Or guilt. You stare at it like it might speak. It doesn't. Far down the corridor, a bell tolls once. The 9th hour. That means someone is lighting the last candle in the chapel. A monk whispers prayers. A scribe scratches out your name next to something you haven't yet agreed to. Somewhere else, a servant threads a needle through fabric you've never touched. The whole machine turns even while you sit still. And the crown, it isn't here. You left it where it belongs tonight. On silk, surrounded by nothing. But it's still in your mind, always tightening like a belt pulled too snug around your thoughts. You picture yourself as others might see you now, robe untied, hair disheveled, spine curved, a man unmasked by quiet. Twice the weight he shows in court and half as sure of what comes next. And still, somehow, they'll call this strength. You're not regal now. Not composed. Just worn thin in that quiet, invisible way that sleep doesn't fix. And as you shift, spine cracking in protest, you wonder how many kings before you sat like this, less like sovereigns, more like men gripping silence and hoping it might teach them how to matter without spectacle. Another pop from your back. Another reminder. The body doesn't care about crowns. It just keeps score. There are footsteps. Light, familiar. You don't have to look. Tilda. She enters without announcement as always. A folded blanket in one hand, a look that doesn't require explanation in the other. She says nothing. Just lays the blanket beside you on the bench and places a stubby candle on the table. Stay here, she murmurs almost kindly. I told them you were in prayer. You arch an eyebrow. Did they believe you? They wanted to, she shrugs. Let them. You give a quiet nod. Before turning away, she adds, the kitchen boys are baking honey bread before dawn. If you're up early, they'll pretend not to see you. A real smile tugs at the edge of your face. That might be the most honest offering you've had all week. And then she's gone again with the same stealth as morning mist leaving stone. You watch the candle for a while. You don't light it. You don't need to. Its glow is enough, soft, steady, the kind that makes even the shadows feel companionable. You lean back once more. The blanket now draped over your legs like a quiet recognition that someone still sees you, not just the crown, but the man beneath it. The fire has gone mostly still. Just a few embers left, glowing like unspoken thoughts. One ember pulses brighter than the rest, then vanishes without ceremony. You think about all the choices you made today, most of which no one will remember. You nodded, approved, smiled, issued justice and mercy in equal, uncertain parts. And now it's all vanished into the dark like smoke through chimney stone. You stare at your hands. They once held blades. Now they hold names. Paper. Grievances. Lives. You take a breath, not shallow, not staged, but full. The kind of breath you used to take before drawing your sword, before opening court, before entering a room where your father stood waiting. You wonder what he'd think of you now. That old king. His portrait still hangs in the war room, scowling at anyone who dares blink near it. He ruled with noise and threat. People obeyed him, but no one ever brought him pie. You rest your head back. The ceiling above stretches like ribs, blackened beams forming the inside of something ancient and large, something no longer interested in names or titles. You speak into that quiet space. I don't know if I'm doing any of this right. No one answers. Not the room. Not the coals. Not the crown waiting down the hall. But something inside you moves. Something slight, like letting air out of a long-held breath. The candle flickers once, as if it heard you. As if that was enough. You pull the blanket up over your chest. Eyes closing, not all the way, but enough to let the world grow distant for a little while longer. Because once you rise, it will all return. But right now, no one is asking anything of you. And that is a gift. You don't remember falling asleep. But when you open your eyes again, the fire has gone low and the candle has melted down to a stub. The darkness isn't cruel. It's velvet. Soft. Unjudging. Your body aches in 3 new places. Your arm's asleep and your neck is protesting every second it supported your head. But none of that matters. Because for once you slept without bracing for footsteps. Without listening for steel drawn in whispers. Without dreaming about the weight of maps or empty thrones. You slept like a person. You rise slowly. The hearth gives one last warm exhale as you move. Your robe slips over your shoulders. The blanket stays folded on the bench. Somewhere down the corridor, bells will ring soon. Another day will unfold like parchment. And the crown will still be waiting. But now so are you. You rise slowly, letting out a low groan as something in your back makes a reluctant adjustment. There's no audience for your discomfort, no amused chuckle, no worried hand offering some potion that tastes like soil and broken promises. You glance at the table. The candle's burnt down, the wax pooled at its base like a crown left too long in the sun. Appropriate. You gather the blanket and fold it with half-hearted care. Not neatly, just enough to feel like the gesture deserved recognition. You place it back where it came from. By dawn, it'll vanish. Tilda always notices. Always tidies the unnoticed. The corridor outside is quiet, save for one weary guard nodding in and out of duty. You pass without a word. He stiffens, gives a respectful nod, but avoids your gaze. You don't blame him. You look like what you are, tired. And there's something oddly freeing in being seen that way. No cloak of grandeur, no pageantry. Just a man making his way back to the only room in the castle where nobody expects him to speak. No parade, no herald, just your footsteps and the soft sigh of fabric dragging behind. Your hand finds the door, it yields easily. Everything inside remains untouched. The crown rests on its cushion like it never left. The goblet hasn't moved. Your robe for tomorrow has been laid out with the kind of precision only someone who's memorized your life would bother with. You pass it all. You don't strike a match. You don't reach for wine. You just slip beneath the heavy covers and let the bed accept your weight with its usual reluctance. The sheets are cold. Always are. But they're yours. You stare into the ceiling and breathe. For a moment, a beat between the tick of fate and duty, you find stillness. The kingdom will call again. The crown will press. But not yet. Not now. Tonight, you remembered the man beneath the title. And he didn't vanish, he endured. Morning comes with hushed voices beyond the door. Low, cautious, the kind of conversation that wants to avoid becoming urgent. You blink, slow and groggy, letting the dawn bleed into your bones. The ceiling is washed with light too honest to ignore. The crown hasn't moved. It never does, which somehow makes it feel heavier. You push yourself upright, every joint echoing the complaint. You sound like a tired cart pulled over too many roads. The air in your chambers holds no warmth, no chill, just the cool indifference of stone. A knock. Not hesitant. Not timid. A knock that means trouble. Come, you rasp. Everard enters, scrolls under one arm like he's afraid they'll escape. Hair combed sharp, robes uncreased. Too composed for the hour. Apologies, your majesty. There's been activity near the northern range. Of course there has. You swing your feet to the floor. It's freezing. Predictably. You consider the basin, dismiss it. Eye water isn't going to help you think. You reach instead for your robe, thick and warm. Someone preheated it. Probably Tilda. You silently promise her a rare thank you. A real one, maybe. Everard trails you, already unraveling the situation. Not a breach. Not yet. Our riders counted strange standards. Small numbers. You take the scroll without inspecting it. It dangles in your hand as you seat yourself near the hearth. No fire. Just last night's ash. You poke at it with the iron rod. No response. Matches your mood. Everard hesitates. Shall we recall the captain from the southern post? Move troops. You finally glance up. No. Not yet. Let them wonder if we're still asleep. He bows and withdraws with the same stiff reverence as always, like the back of your head still holds power. You sit quietly, robe snug, scroll untouched. It's not panic. Not fear. Just tired strategy. Because you know what comes next. You've lived this game in more versions than most priests have prayers. One decision births 100 endings. One pause could save lives or lose everything. And the crown? It never tells you which until it's far too late. You rise. Set the scroll down. It can wait a few more minutes. You lift the crown, not because you feel ready, but because pretending to be has become second nature. You place it gently atop your head. Its weight rests there like an old ache, constant and known. In the reflection of the silver tray, dented, dulled by use, you glimpse yourself again. Not just a monarch. A man carved by duty, propped up by expectation, and still moving forward. You leave your chamber, crown in place, robe heavy on your shoulders as though it's trying to remind your spine of its responsibilities. The stone hallways greet you with a chill, quiet and slow, the way a kingdom yawns awake. Fires haven't reached every hearth. The cold speaks through the walls. You breathe out, see it in front of you like mist. Your pace is steady. Servants bow and vanish. Guards stiffen, boots snap. Young pages flatten themselves against the wall like ivy afraid to be noticed. It's not fear exactly, it's reverence carefully trained to look like admiration. You pass a boy with a tray of apples. He bows too fast. One rolls across the floor toward your boot. You stop. Bend. Pick it up. He freezes. You hand it back. His fingers tremble when he takes it. You nod just once. That's all. He'll tell the kitchens you saved him. It will become a legend before sunset. You keep walking. Past the old tapestry battle of Dunfield where your great-grandfather is gloriously drawn slicing through enemies with theatrical flair despite the truth being a lot more diplomacy and diarrhea. The fabric has faded but the fiction is well preserved. That's the castle's way history that flatters survives best. You arrive at the council chamber. And as always, you stop. Not for pageantry, not even hesitation, but to remember. One hand rests on the doorframe. You feel the worn edges in the wood. For half a breath, you imagine skipping it, walking past, out the keep, into a life not shaped by signatures, flattery, and calculated affection. But you don't. You never do. You step through. The room rises. They always do. Even if you're late, even if your robe is yesterday's, even if your hair looks like you lost a fight with your pillow. You raise your hand before the bowing gets too aggressive. Everard clears his throat. Scouts confirm the riders were garlands. No crest, but the colors match. He passes you a scroll. Their emissary waits in the outer court. You scan the parchment. You've read this story before. It's always the same, a threat disguised as a compliment, a demand they know you'll reject, an apology crafted to shift blame. You lower the scroll. Look to your counsel, the bishop already scowling, the general eyeing maps, the treasurer dreaming of ledgers and cavalry costs. You say nothing. Not yet. Your silence stretches, and they all listen harder because of it. Through the arch you see him, the emissary. Broad, elegant, wrapped in fabric too fine for honesty. Flanked by 2 guards more muscle than mind. A scribe hovers behind, ink-stained fingers clutching parchment like a fuse. You don't go to them right away. Let them stew in your absence. A king's quiet is its own currency. It creates space, and in that space, fear thrives. Finally, you step out into the court. Light paints the stones gold. The emissary bows with just enough tilt to count, not a hair more. It's a gesture laced with performance. Your Majesty, he says, voice polished, full of charm that has teeth beneath. A joy to stand once more in your realm. Once more, you echo. Calm. Steady. I must have missed your last appearance. I trust it ended as well as this one will. His smile flickers. Too many teeth. No sincerity. Then let's not waste time. My Lord of Garland comes in pursuit of peace. You arch a brow. By sending riders over my border without so much as a knock? The emissary lifts his chin. Scouts, your Majesty. A precaution. Defensive in nature. You take one step forward. Just one. Enough to make the space between you evaporate. Peace, you say, calm but flint-edged, doesn't ride in armor. It knocks with empty hands. Behind you, there's a subtle stir. The general, most likely, nodding like a vulture at a feast. The emissary adjusts his sash. No harm was intended. No, you reply, deliberately slow, but there may yet be consequences. That land belongs to farmers who've buried sons beneath its fields. Ask your lord how many graves he's willing to tread over in the name of diplomacy. There's a twitch at the edge of his mouth. Small, but real. You log it away. He offers a scroll. You take it, skim the inked promises dressed as favors. You've read this letter 100 times, only the signatures change. You refold it without ceremony and hand it back. Tell your lord this, he may ride near my lands. He will never ride over them. The scribe behind him pales. The emissary doesn't flinch. I will deliver your message with all the grace with which it was received. You allow yourself a faint smile. Try not to trip over the border on your way out. They turn. They leave. Only once they're gone does Everard speak. A firm stance, your Majesty. You turn slightly. A necessary one. And in that moment, with autumn air brushing past your crown and the silence of a court not daring to exhale, you remember why they fear you. Not for your voice, but for your silence. You linger a moment longer in the courtyard, letting the air and authority settle. Your counsel waits behind you, lips pursed, thoughts swirling, none daring to interrupt your pause. Power isn't always speech. Sometimes it's how long they wait for your next word. Finally, you turn. No more meetings today. Everard opens his mouth, reconsiders bows. He's learning. Your steps echo louder than they need to on the way back into the castle. Not just sound reminders. You no longer walk for yourself. Every pace is recorded, remembered. By the time you reach your solar, the echo of the confrontation has faded, but the weight hasn't. Your shoulders ache with the familiar throb of restraint. You close the door and lean against it. It wasn't the argument that drained you. It was the effort, the armor of composure. The crown's voice in your ear reminding you how kings must be made of steel and silence. You wore it well, but it takes from you every time. A goblet sits on the table. Red wine. Unasked for, but ready. Someone new. You drink. It's sharp. Not sweet. The kind that scrapes honesty from your throat. You stare into the hearth lit, of course. You don't remember when fires stopped being things you lit for warmth and started appearing in rooms before you arrived. You close your eyes. Just listen. All you hear is a heartbeat. Steady. Worn. A knock. Because of course there's always another knock. You don't answer. A familiar voice muffled through wood. It's Tilda. You open the door. She steps inside, holding a plate. Bread and cheese, she says, as if she's delivering royal treasure. You glance at it. Still warm. Humble. Necessary. I was busy, you murmur. She doesn't argue. Just places it before you, pours more wine. You did well, she says. Didn't raise your voice. Didn't flinch. I wanted to. She shrugs. That's how I knew you were doing it right. Almost, you laugh. After she leaves, it's just you. The plate. The fire. The crown resting in the corner like a creature that only stirs when it's time to feed. You eat. Bread with crust-like memory soft at the center. She's sharp enough to remind you you're alive. No words. No counsel. Just food. The wine bites. Maybe it should. The fire flickers like it's trying to warm more than stone. And then the memory hits. A winter banquet. Years ago. The hall draped in frost-killed flowers and garlands pretending they weren't wilting. You sat at the high table, but you looked toward the back. Toward her. She wasn't royalty, not even close. A baker's daughter, perhaps, or maybe a carpenter's niece you never asked, and now it's too late to know. What you do remember is her laugh, like warm cider, and eyes that never flinched, not even when they met yours. You spoke to her only once after that winter feast. She told you she liked how you only spoke when you had something worth saying. 3 weeks later, she was gone. No scandal. No whispered disgrace. Just gone. You can't recall what reason was given. Only that the silence she left behind took up more space in you than it ever should have. You hadn't thought of her in years. But now, with the wine soft in your blood, the fire low and honest, and the room so still it feels like confession, her memory presses in. You sip again, hoping the burn will blur the outline of her face, the edges of that night. It doesn't. You push the plate away, half empty, not because you're done eating, but because you suddenly realize you're not hungry for anything food could solve. The crown rests across the room. Watching. Waiting. Always. You wonder how many kings have sat like this. Surrounded by loyalty, cloaked in reverence, but still drowning in a silence no one else hears. You rise. Cross the room to the tall window. The courtyard below is empty now. The world outside the glass bathed in the silver hush of midnight. You rest your forehead on the cold pane. Close your eyes and let it in the missing. Not just of her, but of the boy you were when her laugh still echoed behind your ribs. You lose time standing there, the stone sill cold beneath your palms. Below, moonlight stretches like silk across the cobblestones. One lonely torch guttering beside the gate, forgotten but still fighting back the dark. You understand that torch more than you should. Eventually, you step away from the glass. Your breath fogs the surface behind you. You return to the fire. The bread is still there. Just a corner left. You eat it slowly and it tastes better than it should. Or maybe you're just finally tasting things. You sit by the hearth, not the throne. The kind of chair that doesn't demand anything from you. The crown remains untouched across the room. And still, your shoulders remember its weight. You wonder if you vanished tonight, hood drawn, name discarded, rings left behind, how long would it take them to notice? Would they send searchers? Or just start grooming a successor? The logs shift again. A soft crack. A sigh. You picture the emissary on the road by now, recounting how the king stood unshaken. How he spoke with steel, how he never blinked. And he'll be right. You were a king today. You were everything the stories demand. But no one will ever mention the man who sat here after. Alone. Quiet. Holding on to warmth like it was something rare. The door moves slightly. A soft creak in the silence. You look, but no one enters. And part of you is relieved. The other part isn't. You draw your knees up, the cloak wrapped tight around you. Your eyes drift to the last stub of a candle, flickering faintly, wax pooled like forgotten thoughts. It won't last much longer. And when it dies, so will the excuse to stay awake. You'll sleep not from desire, but obligation. Because when morning comes, they'll knock again, and you'll rise again, spine straight with duty you never asked to carry. For now, you let the night stay as it is, unpolished, quiet, unafraid of your crown. The candle surrenders quietly. No final flare, no last stand. Just a simple extinguishing. The wick curls in on itself as if even it is tired of trying. You watch it fade to smoke. You don't reach for another. The fire has withered too, just a low bed of coals, warm and slow like an exhausted breath. The stone underfoot is cooling. The castle exhales through its cracks. You rise with a low grunt, stretching until your bones echo like hollow drums. You tug the cloak closer. Not for heat, but for the comfort of its weight, a soft armor forged from years. You lift the crown, not to wear, but to carry. Not now. Not at this hour when even the halls forget who they serve. You hold it like a sacred relic, its meaning earned, not flaunted. The corridors are dim, lit sparsely by torches trembling in their sconces. Your steps are slow, not from weakness, but because the silence allows it. You know the route. Your feet follow a familiar path back to the chamber that always receives the day's remains. When you enter, the fire is already built, modest, obedient. Someone's been through, unseen as always. The bed has been turned, sheets crisp, the scent of rosemary trailing through the air like a hush. You place the crown in its usual spot, beside the basin, near the weathered desk, next to the sealed letter you've never dared open. You sit, remove your boots with care, flex your toes. For a breath, you let your head fall into your hands. The walls don't judge. They've stood through worse than this. Then you lie back, not ceremoniously, just honestly. The mattress yields beneath you. The ceiling greets you like an old friend. You sleep not as a ruler, but as someone remembering who they were before the throne. And your dreams? They bring mist and soil, bare feet and distant laughter. You aren't king in them. Just a man who once ran through orchards. Morning doesn't arrive with light, but with sound. Footsteps outside. Cloth brushing stone. Someone tending the hearth with care reserved for royalty or ghosts. A kettle is placed down. A match sparks. Silence returns. They're waiting. They always are. You stay still, wrapped in stillness, dragging breath from the rhythm of yesterday. You know what waits: duty, wait, repetition. And the fragile quiet of now will vanish with a single motion. Eventually, you stretch. Your shoulder groans in reply. You sit up slowly. The fire glows. The air has turned kind. The basin steams like an invitation. You clutch the blanket a bit longer. 3 knocks. Soft, familiar. An elm's rhythm. Steady, nervous. Sire. You grunt. He enters through a narrow opening, just enough to slip through with a tray. Bread, porridge, 2 figs, and a pot of something hot, either tea or a mild punishment in disguise. You draw your knees up, the cloak wrapped tight around you. Your eyes drift to the last stub of a candle, flickering faintly, wax pooled like forgotten thoughts. It won't last much longer. And when it dies, so will the excuse to stay awake. You'll sleep not from desire, but obligation. Because when morning comes, they'll knock again, and you'll rise again, spine straight with duty you never asked to carry. For now, you let the night stay as it is, unpolished, quiet, unafraid of your crown. The candle surrenders quietly. No final flare, no last stand. Just a simple extinguishing. The wick curls in on itself as if even it is tired of trying. You watch it fade to smoke. You don't reach for another. The fire has withered too, just a low bed of coals, warm and slow like an exhausted breath. The stone underfoot is cooling. The castle exhales through its cracks. You rise with a low grunt, stretching until your bones echo like hollow drums. You tug the cloak closer. Not for heat, but for the comfort of its weight, a soft armor forged from years. You lift the crown, not to wear, but to carry. Not now. Not at this hour when even the halls forget who they serve. You hold it like a sacred relic, its meaning earned, not flaunted. The corridors are dim, lit sparsely by torches trembling in their sconces. Your steps are slow, not from weakness, but because the silence allows it. You know the route. Your feet follow a familiar path back to the chamber that always receives the day's remains. When you enter, the fire is already built, modest, obedient. Someone's been through, unseen as always. The bed has been turned, sheets crisp, the scent of rosemary trailing through the air like a hush. You place the crown in its usual spot, beside the basin, near the weathered desk, next to the sealed letter you've never dared open. You sit, remove your boots with care, flex your toes. For a breath, you let your head fall into your hands. The walls don't judge. They've stood through worse than this. Then you lie back, not ceremoniously, just honestly. The mattress yields beneath you. The ceiling greets you like an old friend. You sleep not as a ruler, but as someone remembering who they were before the throne. And your dreams? They bring mist and soil, bare feet, and distant laughter. You aren't king in them. Just a man who once ran through orchards. Morning doesn't arrive with light, but with sound. Footsteps outside. Cloth brushing stone. Someone tending the hearth with care reserved for royalty or ghosts. A kettle is placed down. A match sparks. Silence returns. They're waiting. They always are. You stay still, wrapped in stillness, dragging breath from the rhythm of yesterday. You know what waits: duty, wait, repetition. And the fragile quiet of now will vanish with a single motion. Eventually, you stretch. Your shoulder groans in reply. You sit up slowly. The fire glows. The air has turned kind. The basin steams like an invitation. You clutch the blanket a bit longer. 3 knocks. Soft, familiar. An elm's rhythm. Steady, nervous. Sire. You grunt. He enters through a narrow opening, just enough to slip through with a tray. Bread, porridge, 2 figs, and a pot of something hot, either tea or a mild punishment in disguise. He sets it down without a word. He's learned. Still, he lingers. You finally glance up. He fidgets. You didn't call for attendance last night, he ventures. I was warm where I was, you reply simply. He nods, eyes wide. He thinks it's a secret, your quiet refuge. You let him believe it. Some truths deserve their mystery. He pauses again at the door. Shall I polish the crown this morning? You glance at it, askew, worn, like even it is weary. No, you say. Let it rest. He blinks. Yes, your majesty. And the door clicks shut behind him. You pour the tea. It tastes like consequence. The bread, still warm, is a comfort. You think of the baker up before the sun, hands floured, crafting this moment unknowingly. And all the others like him, mending, tending, giving, unseen. And here you sit, cloaked in their work. You eat the second fig slower, and you decide today you'll walk the lower halls. Be seen where you're rarely expected. Not from a tower, but among the ones who keep it standing. No announcement. No silver trim. No guards. You don't even tell Everard. If you did, he'd follow with scrolls and worries and words. Today, you walk quiet. The lower corridors hum, not with reverence, but with rhythm. Honest labor. You pass a linen room. 2 women folding sheets the size of sails. They don't notice you at first. When they do, one drops her corner. You raise a hand. Carry on. They blink. Unsure. But you walk on. The kitchen corridor greets you with the scent of bread and onions. You follow it like a trail through memory. You remember these paths before the title, before the crown. A curtain parts. Heat, motion, clang of pot and knife. A girl hurries by with a wheel of cheese like its treasure. You step aside. She doesn't look up. Then someone does. Garrick, the cook. Broad, red-faced, loyal. He sees you. Goes stiff. Ready to shout. You shake your head once. Firm. No ceremony. You move through the kitchen. A stew bubbles. You stop at a table. A boy peels turnips like he's paying penance. You pick one up. Hold it like it's something rare. Good peel, you say. He stares. You nod, then set it down. Then you move on. You pick up a turnip from the boy's pile. He looks up, eyes wide with fear. Is this your first batch, you ask? He nods quickly. Yes, your majesty. You nod, inspecting the vegetable. You missed a spot. He looks like he might pass out. You allow yourself the faintest smile, then move on. You don't linger. Just long enough for them to see not the ruler, but the man beneath the weight. One who breathes the same smoky air and walks the same stones as they do. On your way out, Garrick intercepts you. He's holding a fresh, round loaf wrapped in cloth. Baked at dawn, he grunts, eyes proud. No spices. Just hands, water, and heat. You accept it with a nod. The best kind. He nods back and disappears into the steam and fire of his kitchen. You carry the loaf tucked under your arm as you climb the winding stair, past crumbling mortar, past forgotten doors, back into the part of the castle built for appearances, not people, where the air is perfumed and the silks are louder than the conversations. When Everard finally finds you, irritation hidden poorly behind protocol, he's mid-scroll, already frowning. You were expected, sire. His voice is rehearsed. We've been waiting. I know, you say. You walk past him, unhurried, and take your seat at the council table. You place the warm loaf next to the reports like it belongs. Everard looks at it as though it's a mistake. That is bread, he says. Correct, you reply, slicing it. Would you like some? He hesitates. We have matters of state. We always do. Steam rises from the cut. You tear a piece, chew slowly while the room watches, waiting. We speak of grain, measure yields, tax bread, but none of you have tasted it. The bishop frowns. It is not our station to. It should be, you interrupt, not unkindly. You offer a piece to the steward. He accepts. He eats. He's surprised. You nod. Then finally, the meeting begins. You listen while Everard recounts movements near the Garland border, while the bishop requests more coin for his chapel roof, while the treasurer warns of dwindling reserves. All the while, you break bread, share it quietly. You speak sparingly, but each word lands firm, considered. The man who eats beside them commands more than the man who looms. By the time they leave, the bread is half gone and the air is lighter. The steward hesitates, eyes the final piece. You nod. He takes it. A silent thank you. Alone again, you brush crumbs from your lap. And for the first time in days, you feel like you've ruled, not with decree, but with presence. You don't head to your chambers, nor the war room, not even the gardens. You follow the narrow hall with uneven stones and a leaky ceiling until you reach the wooden door no one notices anymore. It creaks open to reveal the old library. There is no grandeur here, no order. Shelves slump. Scrolls lean in piles. Books sag open like tired lungs. Dust drapes everything in gentle ruin. And for now it is exactly enough. Dust, the kind no one bothers to sweep because no one dares to disturb this place. That's why you come here. You wander through the stillness, trailing your fingers along a crooked table piled with maps, some more fiction than fact. One shows a vast inland sea where none exists. Another charts dragons stalking the western ridges. You settle into the old chair near the corner, the one that lists slightly to the left. No one else ever chooses it. You trust it more for that. Perfect things unsettle you. You don't reach for a book. You just sit. Let the quiet soak in. Let it press gently against your skin, fill your lungs, nestling in your bones like something long missed. It doesn't care that you wear a crown. It only cares that you're here. A sliver of light filters through the narrow window high above, striking an open book like a spotlight embarrassed of its own timing. You glance at the page. Genealogy. The names of rulers inked into eternity. Yours is there. One line. A date. No embellishment. Just a breath between monarchs. You stare. Not in fear. In surprise at how small it is. How a life like yours, heavy with consequence, can be reduced to a single scratch of ink. You wonder what footnote history will assign to you. Maybe they'll mention diplomacy. Maybe the goats. Maybe nothing at all. Perhaps they'll call you wise. Or just. That word, just when used carelessly, can weigh more than any crown. You lean back and close your eyes. The room smells like forgotten stories. Paper, ink, time. You inhale, then exhale a thought into the dimness. I hope they say I listened. Not for validation, but because some kings are remembered not for the wars they won, but for the ones they refused to fight. You sit there until the silence becomes something physical. It's not the emptiness of a war room waiting for orders, nor the hush of a chapel holding its breath. This quiet has layers. It feels like the room remembers you better than anyone else. You glance back at the open book. The page hasn't changed, but you have. There's something unsettling about seeing your life already framed, already final, when you're still in it. You rise slowly. Feel the pull behind your ribs. The kind that comes from sitting still too long in places that make you feel everything. At a small desk in the corner, you spot a stack of letters, ribbons still neat, wax seals still stiff with ceremony. Most are from officials. But one stands out. No seal, no crest. Just a folded piece of parchment. Plain. Personal. You recognize the handwriting before you touch it. Hers. You don't sit. You don't brace yourself. You just unfold the letter slowly, like you're turning a memory back into a voice. The ink is faint, but the words haven't faded. She writes of sea wind and salt on her skin. Her hands are calloused, her sleep easier. She thanks you not for love, not for the past, but for the quiet mercy of letting her leave. She says silence feels different without your voice in it. And then the line that holds. You were never meant to be only a king. I hope you remember how to climb. You fold the letter with care. Lay it gently atop the desk. Then you grip the edge with both hands, steadying yourself not from grief, but from the strange weight of being known too well. Eyes shut, shoulders lowered. You remember the apple, the tower, and the boy you were before the crown tried to make you forget. You remember the tower, the way the stone tore at your hands, how she laughed when you slipped, and how you laughed too, even as gravity took hold. The sound of it, the warmth of it, flickers somewhere in your chest. You draw breath, and with it, something loosens inside you. Not everything, but enough. Enough to make the next hour quieter. You leave the library without a word. No one sees you go. The latch clicks shut behind you like a secret exhale. For once, you're not moving like a king. You're just a man with folded parchment in his hand and something tender still echoing in his ribs. You don't take the main hall back. Instead, your feet guide you through the old paths, the ones buried beneath ceremony, used only when something needs fixing or hiding. Under arches too low for modern pride. Over that loose stone you first tripped on as a boy. Down the stair where you once sat in silence after your father died, not ready to be anyone's heir. The castle is raw here. The edges are rougher. The air tastes older. No polish, no pretense. Just walls that don't ask questions. By the time you return to your rooms, the sun has shifted. It pours through the high windows in long amber streaks. The fire's out. Your robe still slouched over the chair where you dropped it. The whole room feels like it waited without judgment. You sit at your desk. Lay the letter gently in a drawer, not to bury it, but to keep it near. You don't close it right away. You watch the light move across the floor. A bird passes the window. A leaf spins slowly down. A guard patrols far below, never knowing his king just watched him walk. The peace doesn't last. It never does. A knock, there's always a knock. You wait. Then the voice, Your Majesty. The captain of the guard seeks your presence. You don't answer right away. Your hand rests on the desk. You open the drawer again, glance at the letter, not to read it, just to feel it still exists. Then you close it, rise, lift the crown. You place it back on your head. Not from desire, but from duty. Because somewhere between the orchards and the throne, you've remembered enough of who you were to keep carrying who you are. The walk to the war chamber is familiar, but it feels different now. Not heavier, just more deliberate. As if the castle recognizes that something small and unspoken travels with you. The kind of thing that never makes it into songs or scrolls, but changes the way your feet meet the stone. When you step into the chamber, the captain is already waiting at the map table. Mud crusts his boots. His hands are clasped behind his back. That detail tells you more than anything the letter could. Sire, he says, bowing only slightly. He's tired too. There's been word from the Eastern Post. You don't speak yet. You approach. He places the dispatch on the table. The parchment is wrinkled, travel-worn. The seal cracked. Edges stained from weather or worry. You read without touching it. Bandits. 3 villages hit. Livestock gone. 2 guards lost. A missing child. You shut your eyes, not to block it out, but to let it all arrive. You inhale. Let the silence stretch a second too long. How many men stationed there, you ask at last. 17, he replies. You nod once. Too few. He doesn't need to confirm it. You already knew. He's been trying to tell you for weeks, through posture, through pause, through silence. You just weren't listening. Not until now. You circle the table and place your finger on the map there where the ink runs thin from use. Send to ahead, you say. Not just blades. Blankets. Bread. A presence, not a threat. Let them feel the crown before they fear it. The captain straightens. But there's something different in his stance now. a quiet release in his shoulders. I'll go myself. You meet his eyes level. Good. You nod him away, and just as he turns, he hesitates. You seem different today, sire. You tilt your head slightly. Different? Not softer, he says. Clearer. You don't answer. You just let the words settle. Because maybe he's right. Maybe it took seeing your name reduced to ink on a page, one line among many, to remember the only thing that will outlive you is how you carried the crown. When he leaves and the door shuts behind him, you stay. Hands braced against the old map table. A kingdom drawn in fading ink. You trace the area marked by ash and fear. To you, it's a thumbprint. To them, it's a missing child. You roll the map gently as if paper could bruise. For the first time in longer than you'd admit, you feel not just like a king doing his duty, but a man determined to wear the title better. You leave the war room not rushed, not dragged by need, but moved by choice. There's a difference. Urgency splinters. Intention holds. Your steps know the way before your thoughts catch up. Through the low arch past the old sparring court where the grass still bears the scars of youth. Past the courtyard with its rebellious pigeons who act like they own the battlements. Past the stables where the black mare stamps and snorts like she senses a storm you haven't seen yet. You stop short of the main gate. Not there. The side path. The quiet way. The one used by the ones who make things work, bakers with crates, launderers with bundles, guards with patched boots and tired eyes. They see you coming. They don't snap to attention. They just nod. Like this is right. Like this makes sense. You pass through. The town below is wide awake, unruly, alive. Pots clang. Water sloshes in gutters. A child weeps over a snapped toy. Another offers to fix it with a rock. Somewhere, a rooster declares war on the concept of timing. You move through it like breath felt more than seen. A woman stirring a copper pot over open flame pauses, narrows her eyes. Was that? Nah, says someone beside her. Kings don't walk through soup steam. You don't stop. Not because you don't hear them, but because today you're not here to be heard. At the edge of the square, an old man works on a cartwheel, brow furrowed, hands trembling with age but certain in their craft. You crouch beside him. No bow, just a grunt. Can't get proper wood for these damn spokes. You study the wheel. Triash you offer. It bends without breaking. He snorts, side-eyes you. And what would you know about carts? A flicker of a smile. Enough. He huffs a laugh, deep, scratchy, honest. Well, maybe you'll be back tomorrow to help hoist the axle. You stand, dust your knees. Maybe I will. You keep walking. Not fast. Not hidden. They start to notice, not with gasps or genuflection, but with recognition. The kind that isn't taught. The kind that simply sees you. No shouts. No titles. Just a few nods. Small. Hesitant. But real. They nod. Not out of fear, not because they must, but because they see you. And something in your chest, long held tight, lets go just slightly. Because maybe this wordless, grounded presence is the truest kind of power. Not perched above, but walking beside. The road bends past the smithy where the clang of iron echoes like the heartbeat of the town. Sparks rise in short bursts, catching sunbeams like little acts of rebellion. You pause at the edge of the stall. Brina's there, broad-shouldered, stronger than half your guard, face set in permanent forge scowl. She's focused, wrapping leather around a sword hilt, her hands moving with the certainty of someone who's never needed to be told she's good at what she does. You speak quietly, just enough to be heard. Looks balanced. She glances up. A flicker of recognition, but no bow, no flinch. Just, if it weren't, I'd have tossed it in the scrap. That's Brina. She finishes the wrap, sets the blade aside, and leans back against the anvil. Out walking alone today? I am, you say. Seemed the right kind of day for it. She wipes her hands on a cloth that once had color. My boy joined the guard last spring. You nod. Tall, curls like a storm cloud. I saw him on patrol last week. Looked proud. Her smile comes slow, like it had to push past something to get there. He still asks if you've ever noticed him. I just did. Her smile deepens by a breath. He'll brag quiet about that for weeks. You leave her to the ringing steel and the smoke. The rhythm of her hammer picks up behind you, sure, steady. Every footstep forward now feels like a word in a conversation no one is speaking aloud. Connection. At a well, you stop. 3 children argue loudly over a game involving a pebble, a rope, and a very uncooperative chicken. One girl stares at you, wide-eyed and serious. Are you the real king? You crouch to her level. Depends. Does your king eat too much bread and forget people's names sometimes? She thinks, then nods. I think so. Then yes, you say. Good, she replies. Because the other one we pretend is always yelling. You laugh. Not a regal chuckle. Not rehearsed. Just you. As you walk back toward the castle, your steps feel looser. Your jaw less clenched. Your thoughts a little steadier. Not lighter, not free. Just steadier. Because the kingdom isn't always the war room or the banners or the sealed scrolls with red wax and bad news. Sometimes it's a son who hopes the king sees him. A smith who speaks in forged silence. A girl at a well asking if you're real. And your reply, each day you put that crown on, is to be. The gates rise ahead, tall and shadowed in the afternoon light. The guards straighten hands to hilts, backs like walls. You nod. No commands. No announcements. Just a return. The gate creaks open. You pass through. The air shifts. Cooler. Denser. Stone swallows sound in a way the market never does. You're used to it, but today it sharpens. Every footstep, every breath. You don't go to the solar. Not to the council chamber. Not to the room waiting with robes and more decisions than answers. Not yet. You head for the garden, the inner one, tucked behind 2 old towers and a hedge that's been winning the war against the shears. No one's touched it in ages. It's quiet here. Not out of reverence, just neglect. The vines climb freely, the benches are weather-worn, but sunlight still finds the cracks. Sometimes that's enough. You sit on a low stone ledge beside the old fountain. The water hasn't flowed since last year's drought, but rain still gathers in the basin. Feathers too, gifts from birds passing through. You reach into your pocket, pull out a crumb of bread. You break it in your fingers and scatter it over the surface. Silence, then a ripple. Then silver flashes, fish, still alive, small and stubborn, surviving in a forgotten pool. You watch them circle, and for once your thoughts don't go to borders, treaties, or veiled letters from cousins who sign their names like threats. You think of the girl laughing by the tower wall, the kid by the well, the blacksmith's son in guard armor. You murmur, not loud, not even for yourself, that's why I stay. Not from duty, not from fear, but because someone should. And maybe now because you want to. Evening spills gold down the crumbling garden walls. The shadows stretch long and slow like they're reluctant to end the day. You stay seated beside the fountain longer than you should. No one comes looking. No footfalls in the gravel. No throat cleared in hesitation. Maybe they've learned. Or maybe someone finally said the king is where he needs to be. The fish move through the water like memories, circling. You follow one until it slips beneath a lily pad. You wonder if anyone else in the castle even knows they're here. When you rise, it's with a steadiness you haven't felt in weeks. Not healed, just less frayed. No potion. No prayer. Just having walked and spoken and been seen. You retrace your steps slowly. Not because you're weary, but because everything feels worth seeing. A single violet peeks from beneath the ivy. You crouch, touch it lightly. A flower so bold in color, so unnecessary. Yet here it blooms. You make a mental note, don't trim the ivy. Back inside, the castle glows. Corners flicker with candles. Lanterns sway from iron hooks. You pass 2 servants whispering. Their words die mid-sentence when they see you. Their eyes widen. They don't know if they're in trouble. You smile. Let them wonder. Let them speak if you like this, with questions, not reverence. You approach the stairway to your chambers. Pause. Turn. Not up. Left toward the solar. Toward the hearth that'll already be lit. Toward the chair that fits you like an old glove. Toward the plate that's waiting. The wine that sits untouched. Tilda's already there. She doesn't speak. Just places a letter on your desk. Likely another petition. Another problem. You nod. She doesn't ask where you went. She sees the mud. The scuff on your boots. She gives a slight smile. Worth the walk. You settle into the chair with a soft sound that only you and the chair understand. More than worth it. She pours tea. No wine. Not tonight. You wrap your hands around the cup. It's hot. Steadying. You drink. It's sharp, bitter, clean. At the door, she pauses. They missed you. You nod. Let them. She studies you. Will you go back? You glance at the fire. I think I'll go earlier. And when she closes the door behind her and the old stone exhales, you let yourself feel it, the full weight of the crown, still there, still yours, but no longer foreign. Tonight, it doesn't feel like a burden balanced on borrowed strength. It feels like it belongs to someone who's starting to understand why. The fire crackles low in the solar, its glow painting soft amber across the floor like old parchment touched by sunlight. Your chair is closer to the hearth now, not because of the cold, but because fire draws you the same way it drew your father. He never lit a flame himself. Always had someone else do it. But once burning, he'd stare into it like it held answers he was too proud to ask for. You used to think he was waiting for something. Maybe he was. Maybe you were too. The tea has cooled in your grip. You don't drink it. You just hold the cup between your palms, letting its fading warmth anchor you to this hour. One log collapses, the sparks lift, and the shadows rearrange themselves. Across the room, the crown still rests where you left it, untouched since morning. You feel no urgency to place it back on your head, because tonight isn't made of gold or ritual. It isn't about rule or duty. It's about the quiet, the kind that no record keeper ever bothers to ink, the kind of choice that lives between titles. You walk to the desk, take a seat, pull a sheet of parchment forward. You don't write orders. You write names. A letter to the boy in the guard who lifts his chin when he thinks no one sees. Another for the baker with flour on her sleeves and pride in her crust. One for the child by the well who asked if you were real. You don't use royal sign-offs. No seals. No proclamations. Just words, simple, honest, careful. Enough to remind someone they were seen. Enough to remind yourself that seeing them matters. You fold the letters carefully, no signature, no crest. Tomorrow, Tilda will deliver them. Quietly. Without ceremony. No trumpets. Just hands passing truth from one place to another. The kind of service that rewrites a kingdom, one moment at a time. You return to the hearth. Settle back into the chair. Let the warmth rise around you again, wrapping your legs, softening your chest. Your eyes close, not from exhaustion, but from something deeper. Something like resolve. This isn't peace. Not quite. But it's something close. A beginning, maybe. A pause held long enough to remember who you want to be before the noise begins again. Tomorrow will come. It always does. With its demands, its sharp edges, its never-ending ache. But when it finds you, it will not meet the hollow figure of a crown without a man. It will meet someone awake. Someone listening. The fire breathes its last. Not a blaze, not a cry, just the soft fall of ash. And for now, that is enough. Tonight, there is nothing left to command. No decrees waiting on ink, no hands clasped in petition. The letters are written. The halls have stilled. And for once, the kingdom breathes without leaning on your voice to hold it upright. You stretch slowly, deliberately. The pull in your spine hums with the kind of ache that means movement. Not just the ceremonial kind, not the endless circling from one chamber to the next, but the kind that signals something inside you has shifted ever so slightly toward truth. You rise, pulling your robe close like a shield woven not from silk, but from memory. No steel plates, no sword at your side, only the weight of choice stitched into every step. At the window, you look out one last time. The night sky spills open above you, vast and clean. The stars blink slowly like they're keeping secrets. Beneath the canopy, the town rests. Tiled roofs, flickering lanterns, one chimney still smoking. Streets you walked today. Faces you passed. Moments that asked nothing but your presence. You don't gaze down like a sovereign. You gaze like a witness. A custodian of stories that aren't yours to own, only to protect. You turn away gently. The fire behind you dwindles, obedient. The bed weights turned down by hands that knew your hour before you did. The crown still sits on the desk, quiet, heavy, expectant. You walk to it, not to wear it, to honor it. You lift it with both hands, and for the first time, it feels like something earned. You set it beside your bed, not on your head. Not tonight. Tonight, even the crown is allowed to sleep. You lie down, not like a figure carved into myth, like a man exhaling after remembering his own name. The sheets are cool against your skin. The chamber breathes with you. You let your eyes fall shut. And when morning comes, and it always will, and the knock comes, and it always does, you will answer. Not as a duty, not as a mask, but as the man who walked his kingdom, who listened, who remembered. And that is how a kingdom lasts. And that is how a man becomes king. You walk to it, not to wear it, to honor it. You lift it with both hands, and for the first time it feels like something earned. You set it beside your bed, not on your head. Not tonight. Tonight, even the crown is allowed to sleep. You lie down, not like a figure carved into myth, like a man exhaling after remembering his own name. The sheets are cool against your skin. The chamber breathes with you. You let your eyes fall shut. And when morning comes, and it always will, and the knock comes, and it always does, you will answer. Not as a duty, not as a mask, but as the man who walked his kingdom, who listened, who remembered. And that is how a kingdom lasts. And that is how a man becomes king. But morning does not arrive with blare or ceremony. It comes gently, as if reluctant to stir what was finally at peace. There is no trumpet, no decree. Only the soft clink of someone placing a cup on wood. The slow creak of fire being coaxed back to life. The world waits outside your window. You do not rush. For once, you are not late. You are right on time. You rise slowly, the sheets reluctant to release you. The robe finds your shoulders. The fire finds your hands. And your thoughts find clarity where once there was only repetition. Tilda enters without knocking. She never did. In her arms, fresh bread. Still warm, still honest. She places it beside the tea and says nothing. She doesn't need to. You nod, and in that gesture, an entire conversation lives quietly. You eat, not as a monarch fed, as a man breaking fast. And when you finish, there is no herald, just steps. Yours. The halls echo differently now, not with isolation, with presence. Your guards see you, and now you see them. One of them, the boy from the kitchen corridor. He stands straighter when you pass. You stop. You say his name. He almost forgets how to breathe. That is what legacy becomes when it finds humility. In the throne room, the scrolls return, but they are lighter, not because the work has changed, because the one reading them has. Everard still fusses. He will always fuss. But today his complaints meet a different kind of silence. Not the dismissive kind, the patient kind, the kind that waits long enough to hear the truth beneath the worry. You grant land. You deny a title. You pause over a petition that smells faintly of ink and desperation. You read it twice, 3 times, then call for the man who wrote it. He arrives shocked. He thought he was forgotten. You remember his name before he says it. Afternoon brings another counsel. But today there is space for laughter. The Chancellor drops his inkwell. A bird outside sings loudly through a budget proposal. You let it sing. And when debate rises too loud, you stand and say only this. Let the crown serve the people, not the other way around. There is quiet, the kind that follows truth, the kind that does not argue. Later, you walk the grounds, not for show, to feel the earth beneath your boots, to remind yourself the stone you sit on was laid by hands calloused by toil. You stop by the training yard. The young guard, the blacksmith's son, sees you. You motion for a sword. He hesitates, then offers it. You hold it not like a weapon, like memory, then hand it back. He nods. You nod. And everything understood passes without a word. Evening comes. You do not retreat. You remain. A boy delivers a letter, a thank you from the baker, and a small sweet wrapped in cloth. Gooseberry. She remembered. You smile. In your chambers, the fire is already lit. The crown rests where you left it. Still watching. Still waiting. You do not touch it. Not yet. You pour wine. 1 cup. Then a second. You carry it to the window. Tilda meets you there. You offer her the 2nd cup. She raises a brow. Accepts. You both drink. Watch the stars. No words. No roles. Just 2 souls who have weathered the same storms. After a while, she says, "You are not the man you were." You nod. "I hope not." She smiles, leaves, and once again, you are alone, but not lonely. You look to the crown, then to your hands, then to the night. You sleep deeply that night. No dreams, only rest. And when morning comes, and the knock follows, you rise again, not just to rule, to serve, to remember, because the crown does not make the king. The people do. And today, they still believe in you.